Distinguished brethren and brethren all, we are privileged to be taught many lessons as Freemasons. From the greater luminary, the sun, we learn that its strength lies in charitably sharing its benevolent light with all. From the lesser luminary, the moon, we discover the value of beautifying ourselves by reflecting the light of the greater luminary. That is the Freemasonic path to wisdom. So, brethren, on behalf of the District Grand Master of the District Grand Lodge of the Eastern Archipelago, Right Worshipful Brother Dato' Jairaj Ratnaswamy, the Regentrification Project team of the Masonic Club's egress area, led by Worshipful Brother Robbie Hoyscock, the Masonic Club and the Masonic Board, please allow me to take you on a journey through this expansive and encompassing mural that we commissioned the renowned local artist Yip Yew Chong to paint for us. The first thing that will undoubtedly capture your attention is that the mural is framed in Masonic ideal by the Corinthian, Doric, and Ionic pillars. Supported by strength and symmetry, we are invited via the 3 steps of the craft degrees and the moral significance of the working tools to sojourn into a seamlessly blended past, present, and future. When I was invited to conceptualize this mural, I felt it would be of service to the brethren of today and tomorrow if we could not just chronicle the key moments of early Freemasonry in Singapore, but also lay them out on the backdrop of the evolving and developing history of Singapore within the Eastern Archipelago. While the mural is endlessly rich and has so much worth communicating, please allow me to illuminate, for your edification, just a few scenes. The first key scene, worthy of your attention, is that of Sir Stamford Raffles in his Dutch Masonic regalia, together with Major General William Farquhar atop Fort Canning, which was originally known as Bukit Larangan. They, like us, from this vantage point, are overlooking all of downtown Singapore. To repair a loss, we have, in the true Masonic spirit of brotherly love, depicted both men, possibly for the first time in history, on the level. Both deserve recognition for laying the early foundation of modern Singapore. They are standing in front of the bungalow Raffles had built, with his coat of arms on it and the Union Jack flying overhead. Raffles, if he was alive today, would scarcely believe what his little child has grown up to be. The story of modern Singapore does not start with Singapore. It starts with the British East India Company gaining a foothold in India, Penang, Malacca, Java, and Bencoolen before seeking a further inch of land to stand on in the Eastern Archipelago. Towards that effort, Raffles rendezvoused with Farquhar at the Karimun Islands before they made their way to St. John's Island on the 28th of January 1819. After negotiating a preliminary agreement with the Temenggong Abdul Rahman, Raffles on the Indiana, together with an entourage of others on the Investigator, Discover, and Enterprise, locked onto Singapore. You will notice the schooners were not able to make their way up Singapore River because there was a large slab of stone known as the Singapore Stone that was blocking the entrance. So Raffles and Farquhar, together with a sepoy, made their way up Singapore River on a sampan to plant the Union Jack on Singapore. The stone, known as the Singapore Stone, was eventually blown up by the British in 1843, 2 years prior to the founding of the first lodge in Singapore. It has undeciphered script on it, and today it can be found at the National Museum of Singapore. Negotiations with the Sultan of Johor resulted in the 1819 Singapore Treaty. It was signed on the 6th of February 1819 in the presence of Malay dignitaries, planters, and Orang Lauts. The treaty gave the British East India Company the exclusive right to trade and maintain factories on a narrow strip of land in Singapore. In return, the Sultan and Temenggong received a yearly stipend and agreed to protect the British against their internal enemies on the island and in Johor. The British, in return, pledged to assist the Sultan against external attacks. Raffles left Singapore the very next day. He left Farquhar behind as Singapore's first British resident. He gave Farquhar very strict instructions on how to govern Singapore. Immediately, administrators, merchants, traders, among others, flocked to Singapore. They assisted to build modern Singapore. In their midst were Freemasons such as the educator, worshipful brother John Colson Smith, the trader, brother Charles Andrew Dice, and the land auctioneer, brother Thomas Owen Crane. Brother Crane, for example, was one of the first 10 Europeans to settle in Singapore. And that is what these three men, in coats, black ties, and Masonic regalia represent. The Freemasons who helped build early Singapore, even before a lodge existed on the island. Next, I draw your attention to the 1837 Armenian Church. It is a building most of us are very familiar with, as it's right across the street from us. The church lent its name to the street that ran alongside it, the Armenian Church Street. It was eventually shortened to Armenian Street. On 26 February 1845, the United Grand Lodge of England warranted the first Masonic lodge in Singapore. On 8th December of that same year, the Zetland Lodge was consecrated in a house on Armenian Street. Its founding master was Worshipful Brother John Colson Smith. Worshipful Brother Smith was also the founding master of the second lodge in Singapore, the Lodge of Fidelity. It was warranted on 3rd April 1858 and consecrated on 5th August that year. It was as a result of Worshipful Brother John Colson Smith founding these two lodges that the United Grand Lodge of England allowed the Provincial Grand Lodge of the Eastern Archipelago to be constituted later that year on the 4th of December 1858. In 1866, it was redesignated as the District Grand Lodge of the Eastern Archipelago. In 1863, with the mission of forming a province completed, the Lodge of Fidelity amalgamated into the Zetland in the East Lodge. 4 years later, in 1867, the Lodge of St. George was consecrated. It immediately became the stellar contributor it still is. It was through the collective contributions of the Brethren of the Zetland the East Lodge and the Lodge of St. George, under the leadership of Worshipful Brother Colonel Samuel Dunlop, who has served as the Worshipful Master of both lodges, that we get Freemasons Hall Singapore. It was consecrated on 27th December 1879. On the very day its architect, Worshipful Brother Thomas Cargill, was installed as the Worshipful Master of the Zetland in the East Lodge. Freemasonry in Singapore has since grown to 15 craft lodges and numerous appendant orders. Hence the lodge banners of the English, Scottish, Irish, and French Constitution depicted outside of Freemasons Hall Singapore on this mural. Next, if we look beyond Fort Canning, we see the 1823 Singapore Institution founded by Raffles and the 1887 Raffles Hotel out by the waterfront at the appropriately named Beach Road. Further beyond them, on the sea, we see the representation of the British Royal Navy ships, the Prince of Wales and the Repulse, being sunk on the 10th of December 1941 by Japanese torpedo bombers. This was just 3 days after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. It dragged Singapore and British Malaya into the theatre of the Second World War. Lives were lost, atrocities committed, and Freemasons all across the Eastern Archipelago were interned. Once the dust settled, the world woke up to a new world with many nations regaining their independence. The 1967 War Memorial Park, with the Civilian War Memorial erected at its center, reminds us all of the value of peace. In the center of the mural, we see the iconic buildings of old Singapore. The 1836 St. Andrew's Cathedral, the 1929 City Hall, the 1939 Supreme Court, the 1852 Singapore Cricket Club, and the 1862 Old Town Hall that became the Victoria Theatre and Concert Hall. They are all bearing silent witness to the independence of a new nation. Contrary to popular belief, there was no parade held in the midst of the somber events of the 9th of August 1965. So the parade that is being witnessed by these national landmarks is the hopeful parade of the 9th of August 1966. Incidentally, the Proclamation of Singapore in 1965 was drafted by the Minister of Law, Edmund William Barker. E.W. Barker, as he was more commonly known, was the great-great-grandson of the first junior warden of the Zetland in the East Lodge, Brother Thomas Owen Crane. Freemasonry in Singapore, as part of the various constitutions, has continued its progress since independence in 1965. In 2015, Singapore celebrated its 50th anniversary of independence. It was referred to as SG50. In 2019, it celebrated the Bicentenary of Singapore as per the founding of Singapore by Sir Stamford Raffles. The tagline for the Bicentenary was "From Singapore to Singaporeans." And with that, brethren, we have taken a full circle to modern-day Singapore. Brethren, it's probably becoming fairly evident to you that some deep thought has gone into conceptualizing and bringing this mural to life. It is not just a kaleidoscopic representation of the past. It was our wish for it to be a multi-layered gift to the present and future brethren of our fraternity. Freemasonry has always hidden its secrets in plain sight. It is in that spirit, and without giving any of them away, that the mural has been further enhanced with a plethora of Masonic symbolism. While some are obscure and others more obvious, they were all put there with purpose and for a reason. At your own pleasure, we invite you to come and see what you can discover. Finally, brethren, if you excursion to the other side of the mural, you will find at the base, between the Doric and Ionic pillars, our famed Masonic pavement. It serves to remind us that we as Freemasons meet on the level and part on the square, and should learn to treat the diametrically opposite impostors of the vagaries of life just the same. At the top of the stained glass window, you will encounter the single most iconic and identifiable symbolism of Freemasonry, the square and compasses. They have been restored to the golden ratio to highlight the principles of sacred geometry that are embedded within it. Above it, you will face the all-seeing eye of the great architect. At the center, perched on the outline of Freemasonry in Singapore, are the blazons of the English District Grand Lodge of the Eastern Archipelago, the Scottish District Grand Lodge of the Middle East, the Irish Provincial Grand Lodge of Southeast Asia, and the French Grand Lodge du District International. They are circumscribed by the coat of arms of all the craft lodges from all four constitutions that call Freemasons Hall Singapore home. Starting on the left, we have the oldest or premier lodge, the Zetland in the East Lodge. And as we go down and around, we end with our latest, youngest, or ultimate lodge, Oldham Lodge. Brethren, you will notice that we have left space for more lodges to be part of our very happy fraternity here at Freemasons Hall, Singapore. With that, distinguished brethren and brethren all, on behalf of the Right Worshipful District Grand Master of the District Grand Lodge of the Eastern Archipelago, the Regentrification Project team, the Masonic Club, and the Masonic Hall Board, I trust I've taken you on a delightful and informative journey of this marvelous mural. If a picture paints 1,000 words, this was our attempt to paint all of Freemasonry in Singapore at one go.